How big should the defense budget be? How much wasteful or misaligned spending can be cut? Are big reforms necessary, or can smaller ones add up to a significant difference? While the top-line number is large, we are now spending much less of our GDP on defense than at virtually any other time since World War II. You're about to hear from Mackenzie Eaglen of the American Enterprise Institute and Roger Zakheim of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute as they underscore the need for major changes in how America funds and manages its military to address the pressing threats of the 21st century. Mackenzie focuses intently on streamlining defense budgeting and Pentagon operations to maximize efficiency and urgency, while Roger takes a bigger view, arguing that only major hikes in defense spending can deliver the capabilities to deter our adversaries.
The American military faces an array of challenges today. It starts with the People's Republic of China, the People's Liberation Army, but it's not limited to China. We also face an acute challenge from Russia as we see the war playing out in Europe with its aggression against Ukraine, and also in the Middle East. We have a challenge posed by Iran as we see playing out in the mayhem in the Middle East with Hamas's attack on Israel. And then, of course, we have threats posed by terrorist organizations. This array of threats spans continents around the world, and the world requires the United States military to deter and, if necessary, defeat these challenges wherever they may recur.
But there is also the threat in Washington, D.C., which, as former Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis said, no enemy has done greater damage to the U.S. military than Congress through the lack of on-time appropriations. And so Washington has to also be a partner in confronting global threats. Congress has a vital role to play in doing its fundamental job of providing on-time appropriations for the Defense Department and all of the federal government. The U.S. military is uniquely harmed when they don't receive on-time funds because they spend more in goods and contracted services and IT and technology than all other federal agencies combined. By not doing their core job on time to provide for the common defense, Congress adds waste, increases cost, steals time that can't be bought back, and adds inefficiency to the bureaucracy. The U.S. military conventional and nuclear deterrents are at a nadir. We see this with the increase in violence and instability around the globe. The U.S. military is increasingly falling behind China's military in particular as a pacing threat in various ways, whether that's the size of their Navy or the capabilities of their rocket and space forces. We're not going fast enough.
If the United States military doesn't see a rebuilding of the kind that we had during the Reagan years, we risk our economic supremacy, American peace and prosperity. That is what's at stake. If we stay on the current course, if we continue year after year to have our military be funded on continuing resolutions, the result will be a future where the United States military is second to the People's Republic of China, which means we haven't only lost a race in terms of the best military in the world, it risks our peace and prosperity. In other words, the life that we lead today, with America leading the world, with Americans living generally at peace, where we have economic prosperity, will go away if our fighting force is unable to deter adversaries from great powers, emerging powers, and terrorist organizations. We need to keep pace and continue to fund our military at a level that they can modernize and they can innovate. The way we've done it over the past number of years, it will reduce the United States military not to sustain a global power that we've been for a generation, but reduce us to a regional power. And when we become a regional power, we are unable to protect those interests that keep America safe at home and keep American prosperity strong.
In Washington, there are typically two camps of thinking about the defense budget. One is that you could just spend it smarter and live within your means, and the other is that dollars need to be additive to meet changing threats because so much of the defense budget is on autopilot. It's fenced and fixed, and it goes to sort of keeping the machinery running on time. Both have a point. A great irony of Congress not providing budgets on time, as they've done for every year except one for the last 15, is that they force the feds to then spend the money when they do provide it in a shorter window of time. So instead of 12 months to spend their money, for example, the US military might only get 6 months to spend that money. As a result, they often can't do that. But then there is a penalty at the end of the fiscal year called use it or lose it, and money you haven't spent gets returned to the Treasury. It's a burden placed on the Defense Department by a Congress that didn't do its job. Defense budget's not white-sheeted or clean-sheeted every year like some organizations and businesses can do. It simply starts from what they did last year and changes and tweaks for the next year. I call it the paradox of scarcity in the defense budget of largesse.
There are a lot of people in Washington, D.C., a lot of armchair generals that will tell you we have to reform the Pentagon. I'm only interested in reform if it results in building the best fighting force the world has ever seen. We need builders. Now, there are many things we can do to build the military, but it starts with one essential thing, and that's capital. And that's the responsibility of the President of the United States working with the US Congress. And what's required there is pretty clear. We know historically, at a moment where we need building, and we need building today, it requires at least 5 to 6% GDP. We saw that during the Cold War with President Reagan. That's how we applied peace through strength to defeat the Soviet Union, and we're going to require something similar today. So as we build the military for the 21st century to prevail against these conflicts or prevent those conflicts and ensure the United States maintains a military that is peerless in the world, that the United States maintains military superiority against anyone, it is essential in this moment in time that our Pentagon and our leaders integrate the world's best technologies into our military platforms and make sure our warfighters are leveraging the best commercial technology. As opposed to a generation ago, where we had to look inside the 5-sided walls of the Pentagon to find the best technology, the reality today is that our technology that's going to make America's military the best in the world resides in places like Silicon Valley and other technology hubs around the United States. Essential is to invest in this technology and make sure those companies are rewarded and incentivized to give their best technology to our warfighters. That won't happen on its own. It requires policies pushed by the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the military services, and the US Congress to make sure we're leveraging the best in technology, be it artificial intelligence, be it the software that we all enjoy in our phones and our other instruments of technology. We got to make sure that the platforms of the 21st century that our warfighters use incorporates that technology.
Within the Defense Department, there are a number of bite-sized reforms that would have outsized impact in the near term to help the bureaucracy operate more efficiently. Reform by reduction, subtraction, and rescission is much more helpful at this point than addition. That means laws that can be expired, policies that can be sunsetted, regulations that can go away, work and tasks that are of lesser importance that no longer need to be done anymore. This is the kind of review Defense Department leadership with congressional support needs to be undertaking all the time. Congress and the Defense Department can operate at what Jim Mattis again called the speed of relevance, helping the US military keep up with a world of ever-changing threats. But if Congress wants to truly be helpful, they can start by going back to the basics and passing budgets on time and at adequate levels sufficient to meet the need. After the start of each fiscal year, when Congress has not done its job and provided on-time budgeting for the US military, members of Congress should have their pay sequestered until they pass appropriations.
So when you have an entity that receives nearly $1 trillion in funding annually, no doubt there's going to be waste, fraud, and abuse. Any organization of that size is going to have to deal with that problem. But let's be clear. The levels of waste, fraud, and abuse at the Department of Defense and the US military in no way is greater than you'd see in any Fortune 500 company. It's a problem. It's part of being human. We need to get after it, as any good manager should. But let's not do it in a fashion that undermines what we're supposed to do as a country, and that is have a military that is well-funded, well-equipped, and protects and preserves our interests. The problem is reformers tend to get wrapped around the axle of lots of ideas that tends to choke the military, choke acquisition, and prevent the military actually from being the force we need. Now, if the reform results in more efficient spending, that's going to drive better military platforms, a better equipped force that can prevail in conflicts should they arise, and certainly deter conflicts from ever coming, then that is worthy of inquiry and attention. But the record of reformers has not been that way. It fails to reform and it fails to rebuild.
Congress doing its fundamental job and passing budgets on time primarily will help the Defense Department just as much as if they were to give them new additional dollars. Similarly, Pentagon leadership can do better by going faster, by making urgency a priority that trickles down all the way to the bottom of the bureaucracy, including in purchasing and in contracting. Below senior leader levels, however, the bureaucracy keeps on bureaucracying, and urgency has not trickled down, particularly to Pentagon contracting. Everything's going as slow as it ever has, with very little examples of moving quickly to meet emerging threats and needs, particularly with new technologies or defense startups or new entrants to the Defense Department ecosystem. By going faster in contracting, the defense bureaucracy itself could do a lot to improve its own efficiency with the help of a partner in Congress.
Ronald Reagan believed deeply in the principle of peace through strength. Quite clear what strength means. That means you have to invest in a military that is the greatest military in the world, that no adversary would ever seek to challenge. But it's also worth thinking about the peace side of the equation. What kind of peace did Ronald Reagan seek when he advanced peace through strength? And I think that's helpful as we consider the challenge today with the People's Republic of China, particularly as we think about Taiwan. Under what conditions might President Xi decide today is not the day where I want to blockade Taiwan? Today is not the day where I want to carry out an amphibious assault in Taiwan and occupy the island? Ronald Reagan was quite clear on how he'd answer that question. The Chinese will not seek to take Taiwan if they viewed the United States as the stronger of the two countries, the country with the stronger military. Strength is ultimately what delivers peace. That's what he believed in his day, and that's what I believe is the key equation to ensuring stability and peace, whether it be in the Indo-Pacific or any other place in today's world.
The Tennenbaum Program for Fact-Based Policy is an important new Hoover Institution initiative intended to improve the quality of information shaping the nation's most debated policy questions. It is dedicated to collecting and analyzing data and providing a forum for experts on both sides of the political aisle from alternative policy perspectives to educate the American public about important and often controversial topics.